You know, there comes a moment in every person's life when someone hurts you so badly that you wonder why the universe allows it to happen. You lie awake at night, replaying the scenes in your mind, feeling the sting of betrayal, the weight of injustice, the crushing pain of being wronged by someone you trusted or someone who had no right to treat you that way. And in those dark moments, you ask the question that has echoed through human consciousness since the beginning of time. Where is God in all of this? Why doesn't God do something about the people who hurt me? Let me tell you something that might change the way you see everything. God is not sitting up there with a ledger, writing down names and planning revenge on your behalf. That's not how the divine works. That's not how the universe operates. The divine intelligence that created everything, that flows through everything, that IS everything, doesn't function like a cosmic bouncer waiting to throw troublemakers out of the club of life. No, the way God deals with those who hurt you is far more elegant, far more profound, and far more effective than anything your ego could ever conceive. When someone hurts you, the first thing that happens is that your ego jumps into action. Your ego wants justice. Your ego wants them to suffer the way you suffered. Your ego wants everyone to know what they did to you. Your ego wants vindication, validation, and vengeance. But here's what you need to understand. Your ego is not connected to the divine source. Your ego is the part of you that feels separate from God, separate from others, separate from the flow of life itself. When you operate from ego, you're operating from fear. And fear is the opposite of love. And God, the universe, the divine intelligence, whatever name you want to give it, is love. So when you're asking God to punish someone who hurt you, what you're really doing is asking the universe to lower itself to the level of ego. You're asking love to become hate. You're asking peace to become war. You're asking the infinite to become finite. And that simply cannot happen because it would violate the very nature of what God is. But this doesn't mean that people who hurt you get away with it. Oh no, quite the contrary. You see, there's a law operating in this universe that's more reliable than gravity, more consistent than the sunrise, more certain than death itself. Some people call it karma. Some people call it the law of cause and effect. Some people call it reaping what you sow. But whatever you call it, it's always working, always balancing, always bringing people face to face with the consequences of their choices. When someone hurts you, they're not just hurting you, they're hurting themselves. They're cutting themselves off from the source of all good, from the flow of divine love, from the peace that passes all understanding. Every time a person acts from a place of cruelty, hatred, jealousy, or malice, they're essentially poisoning their own well. They're blocking their own blessings. They're creating their own suffering, and the universe doesn't need to punish them because they're already punishing themselves. Think about it this way. When you hurt another person, what's really happening? You're operating from a consciousness of lack, of fear, of separation. You're believing the lie that there's not enough love, not enough success, not enough happiness to go around, so you have to take it from someone else or knock someone else down to build yourself up. But that very belief, that very consciousness, creates a life of lack. It creates a life where you're always afraid, always suspicious, always looking over your shoulder, always wondering when someone's going to do to you what you did to them. That's not a life. That's a prison. And the person who hurt you is living in that prison right now. Meanwhile, you have a choice. You can join them in that prison by holding on to your anger, your resentment, your desire for revenge. Or you can set yourself free by understanding that what they did to you says everything about where they are in their spiritual development and nothing about your worth as a divine being. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but that's not fair. They should pay for what they did. And I understand that feeling. I've been there. We've all been there. But fairness is a concept invented by the ego. The universe doesn't operate on fairness. The universe operates on love, on growth, on evolution, on lessons that need to be learned. And sometimes the deepest lessons come through the deepest pain. When someone hurts you, God is not absent. God is right there, holding you, comforting you, guiding you toward the lesson that's waiting for you in the pain. Because every person who hurts you is actually a teacher in disguise. They're showing you where you still need to grow, where you still need to heal, where you still need to develop your spiritual muscles. Maybe they're teaching you about boundaries. Maybe before they hurt you, you were someone who said yes to everything, who gave until you had nothing left, who allowed people to treat you poorly because you didn't believe you deserved better. And their betrayal, their cruelty, their disrespect was the universe's way of saying, wake up, learn to honor yourself, learn to protect your energy, Learn that loving others doesn't mean allowing them to abuse you. Maybe they're teaching you about forgiveness. Not the kind of forgiveness where you pretend everything's okay and let them keep hurting you. No, real forgiveness. The kind where you recognize that hurt people, the kind where you understand that their actions came from their own pain, their own fear, their own disconnection from the divine. The kind where you release the poison of resentment because you know that holding on to it only hurts you, not them. Maybe they're teaching you about faith. Maybe you needed to lose everything to realize that your worth doesn't come from external validation, from other people's opinions, from your reputation or your relationships or your accomplishments. Maybe you needed to be stripped down to nothing to realize that you are a divine being, a spiritual entity having a human experience, and that nothing anyone does or says can ever diminish the truth of who you really are. Here's what most people don't understand about how God deals with those who hurt you. God doesn't deal with them at all. God simply allows the law of consciousness to operate. And that law states that whatever consciousness you hold, whatever energy you put out, you must receive back. It's not punishment. It's not revenge. It's just the way the universe works. If you put out hatred, you receive hatred. If you put out love, you receive love. If you put out cruelty, you receive cruelty. If you put out kindness, you receive kindness. The person who hurt you is living in a universe that reflects their own consciousness back to them. And if their consciousness is filled with darkness, with fear, with malice, then their life is filled with darkness, with fear, with malice. They're already living in hell. They're already suffering. They're already paying the price. But here's the beautiful part, the part that will set you free if you can really hear it. You don't have to wait for them to suffer. You don't have to watch their downfall. You don't have to know what consequences they face. Because the moment you let go of needing them to be punished, the moment you release them to their own karma, to their own lessons, to their own path, that's the moment you step back into your power. That's the moment you reconnect with the divine. That's the moment you remember who you really are. You are not a victim. You are a spiritual being with infinite power to create your reality. Yes, someone hurt you. Yes, what they did was wrong. Yes, you have every right to feel angry and sad and betrayed, but you also have a choice about what you do with those feelings. You can use them to fuel your growth, or you can use them to fuel your destruction. You can use them to become more compassionate, more wise, more spiritually evolved, or you can use them to become bitter, resentful, and stuck. God is not going to swoop down and fix your life. God is not going to make the person who hurt you suffer so that you can feel better. That's not how it works. But what God will do, what the universe will do, what the divine intelligence will do, is give you everything you need to heal, to grow, to transform this pain into power. All you have to do is be willing to do the inner work. And what is that inner work? It starts with taking responsibility for your own emotional state. Nobody can make you feel anything without your permission. Yes, they can do hurtful things. Yes, they can say cruel words. Yes, they can betray you and lie to you and treat you badly. But your response to those things, your interpretation of those things, your decision about what those things mean about you, that's all within your control. When someone hurts you and you immediately think, I must not be good enough, or I must not be lovable, or there must be something wrong with me, that's not God talking. That's your wounded ego. That's the part of you that forgot its divine nature. The truth is that what they did has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their level of consciousness. You cannot be diminished by another person's actions. You cannot be made less than by someone else's choices. You are a child of the divine, a piece of God experiencing itself in human form. Your worth is inherent, unchangeable, eternal, and the sooner you remember that, the sooner you stop giving away your power to people who hurt you. Now, let's talk about forgiveness, because this is where so many people get stuck. They think forgiveness means letting someone off the hook. They think forgiveness means pretending everything's fine. They think forgiveness means allowing that person back into their life to hurt them again. And because they think that's what forgiveness is, they refuse to forgive. They hold on to their anger like it's a precious treasure, not realizing it's actually poison. Real forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. Real forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the prison of resentment. When you refuse to forgive, you're the one who suffers. You're the one who carries the weight. You're the one who relives the pain over and over again. The person who hurt you has probably moved on. They're probably not thinking about you at all. But you're still there, stuck in the past, replaying what happened, imagining what you should have said, fantasizing about revenge. And all the while, your life is passing you by. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with the person who hurt you. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to trust them again. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to expose yourself to more hurt. Forgiveness simply means you release the emotional charge around what happened. You stop giving it power over you. You stop letting it define you. You stop using it as an excuse for why your life isn't working. Because here's a hard truth that you need to hear. As long as you're focused on what someone else did to you, as long as you're waiting for them to apologize or suffer or acknowledge the pain they caused, as long as you're blaming them for your unhappiness, you're giving away your power. You're making them responsible for your joy, your peace, your success. And that means you're stuck. You can't move forward because you've tied your forward movement to something outside of yourself. God is trying to give you everything you've ever wanted. The universe is trying to bring you blessings beyond your wildest dreams. But you can't receive them because your hands are full of resentment. You can't see the opportunities because you're too busy looking backward. You can't hear the guidance because you're too busy listening to the voices in your head telling you that you were wronged. Let it go. Not because they deserve forgiveness. Not because what they did was okay. But because you deserve peace. You deserve joy. You deserve to move forward into the magnificent life that's waiting for you. And you can't do that while you're chained to the past. When you finally release the need for revenge, when you finally stop waiting for karma to punish them, when you finally forgive and let go, something miraculous happens. You become free. And in that freedom, you start to see things differently. You start to see that maybe, just maybe, what felt like the worst thing that ever happened to you was actually setting you up for the best thing that ever happened to you. Maybe that betrayal removed someone from your life who was blocking your blessings. Maybe that rejection redirected you toward your true purpose. Maybe that loss created space for something better to come in. Maybe that pain cracked you open so that more light could get in. Maybe what seemed like an ending was actually a beginning. This is how God deals with those who hurt you. Not by punishing them, but by using their actions as a catalyst for your transformation. Not by making them suffer, but by helping you grow beyond the need for their suffering to make you feel whole. Not by getting revenge on your behalf, but by showing you that you never needed revenge in the first place because you were already complete, already perfect, already whole. The universe has a funny way of working things out. People who live from a place of darkness tend to attract more darkness into their lives. People who hurt others tend to be hurt themselves. People who sow seeds of cruelty tend to reap harvests of pain. But this isn't God punishing them. This is simply the law of consciousness in action. This is simply the mirror of the universe reflecting back to them the energy they're putting out. And here's something else you need to understand. Sometimes the person who hurt you will never face any obvious consequences. Sometimes they'll seem to prosper. Sometimes they'll seem happy and successful while you're struggling to pick up the pieces. And this is when your faith is really tested. This is when you have to trust that the universe knows what it's doing. This is when you have to remember that you can't see the full picture. You don't know what battles that person is fighting internally. You don't know what demons they're wrestling with in the middle of the night. You don't know what price they're paying in their own consciousness, in their own soul, for the choices they've made. And frankly, you don't need to know, because your job is not to monitor their karma. Your job is to focus on your own growth, your own healing, your own evolution. When you spend your energy focused on what's happening to them, you're wasting energy that could be used to create an amazing life for yourself. When you spend your time hoping they suffer, you're actually keeping yourself connected to their energy. You're actually giving them power over you. You're actually blocking your own blessings. The most powerful thing you can do when someone hurts you is to become so focused on your own growth, your own joy, your own success, that you simply forget about them. Not because you're pretending it didn't happen, not because you're in denial, but because you've genuinely moved on, you've genuinely healed, you've genuinely released them from your consciousness. This is what it means to turn the other cheek. It doesn't mean you let people abuse you. It means you don't engage with their negativity. It means you don't lower yourself to their level. It means you stay connected to your divine nature even when others are disconnected from theirs. It means you respond to hatred with love, to cruelty with kindness, to darkness with light, not because they deserve it, but because that's who you are. When you live from this place, when you operate from this consciousness, you become untouchable. Not because nothing bad ever happens to you, not because people never hurt you, but because you know that no external circumstance can ever touch the truth of who you are. You know that you are a spiritual being, eternal and infinite, and that this human drama is just a tiny blip in your soul's vast journey. People will come and go from your life. Some will love you, some will hurt you, some will lift you up, some will let you down, some will see your value, some will be blind to it. But none of that changes your worth. None of that changes your connection to the divine. None of that changes the fact that you are here for a purpose, that you have gifts to give, that you have a destiny to fulfill. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most are actually your greatest teachers. They're showing you what you don't want so you can get clear on what you do want. They're showing you how not to treat people so you can become more conscious of how you treat people. They're breaking your heart so it can break open and become more compassionate, more understanding, more loving. This doesn't mean you should be grateful that they hurt you. This doesn't mean you should thank them for their cruelty. This simply means that you can choose to find meaning in the pain. You can choose to use the experience as fuel for your growth. You can choose to become better instead of bitter. God is not punishing the person who hurt you. But God is also not leaving you alone in your pain. The divine is always there, always supporting you, always guiding you toward healing. All you have to do is be willing to do the work. All you have to do is be willing to look within instead of focusing without. All you have to do is be willing to take responsibility for your own happiness instead of making it dependent on what someone else does or doesn't do. You have to understand that everyone is doing the best they can with the level of consciousness they have. The person who hurt you wasn't capable of better in that moment. If they were capable of better, they would have done better. This doesn't excuse their behavior. This doesn't make it okay. But it helps you understand that their actions were a reflection of their own inner state, not a reflection of your value. When you really get this, when you really understand this, you stop taking things personally. You stop making other people's behavior about you. You stop letting external circumstances determine your internal state. You become centered in your own divine nature, and from that center, nothing can shake you. This is the ultimate protection. This is the ultimate power, not the power to control what others do, not the power to make them pay for hurting you, but the power to remain at peace regardless of what anyone else does. The power to stay connected to love even when surrounded by hate. The power to be the light even in the midst of darkness. And when you live from this power, something beautiful happens. You stop attracting people who hurt you. You stop tolerating behavior that dishonors you. You stop settling for less than you deserve. Because you're no longer operating from a consciousness of unworthiness. You're no longer believing the lie that you have to accept crumbs. You're no longer afraid that if you set boundaries, no one will love you. You start to see that the universe was actually protecting you all along. Every person who hurt you and then left your life was actually being removed by divine intelligence because they were not aligned with your highest good. Every door that closed in your face was actually the universe redirecting you toward a better door. Every loss was actually making room for a greater gain. But you can only see this in hindsight. You can only see this when you've done the inner work. You can only see this when you've released the need for revenge and embraced the opportunity for growth. In the moment of pain, it feels like the end of the world. But years later, when you're living your best life, when you're surrounded by people who truly love you, when you're doing work that fulfills you, when you're at peace with yourself, you'll look back and realize that what felt like a curse was actually a blessing. This is how God deals with those who hurt you. Not by punishing them in ways that satisfy your ego, but by using their actions as a catalyst for your spiritual evolution. By taking what was meant to destroy you and using it to develop you. By transforming your pain into purpose, your mess into a message, your test into a testimony. Every hurt contains a hidden gift. Every betrayal contains a powerful lesson. Every loss contains an opportunity for gain. But you have to be willing to look for it. You have to be willing to shift your perspective. You have to be willing to ask not why did this happen to me, but what is this trying to teach me? How can I use this to become a better, stronger, wiser version of myself? When you ask these questions, when you approach your pain from this perspective, everything changes. You stop being a victim and become a student. You stop being powerless and become empowered. You stop waiting for someone else to fix your life and start taking responsibility for creating the life you want. The truth is, nobody can hurt you without your participation. They can do things that are hurtful, they can say things that are cruel, but whether or not those things actually wound you, whether or not those things define your reality, that's up to you. You get to choose what you make it mean. You get to choose how long you carry it. You get to choose whether you use it to close down or open up. This is your power. This is your divinity. This is the aspect of God within you that can never be taken away, never be diminished, never be destroyed. And when you learn to live from this place, When you learn to operate from this consciousness, you become unstoppable. Not because nothing bad ever happens to you, but because you know that nothing bad can ultimately defeat you. You have everything you need inside of you to heal from anything, to overcome anything, to transform anything. The same power that created the universe lives within you. The same intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and grows trees from tiny seeds is flowing through you right now. And that power, that intelligence, is always working for your highest good, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when you can't see it, even when everything seems to be falling apart. Trust the process. Trust that the universe knows what it's doing. Trust that you are exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you need to become. Trust that the person who hurt you played a role in your story, but they're not the author of your story. You are. God is. And together, you're writing a story of redemption, of transformation, of triumph. So when you're lying awake at night, wondering why someone was allowed to hurt you, wondering where God was in all of it, wondering when justice will be served, remember this: God is not absent. God is not indifferent. God is not sleeping on the job. God is right there with you, in you, as you, holding you, guiding you, transforming you. And the way God deals with those who hurt you is by making sure that their actions, no matter how cruel, no matter how painful, ultimately serve your highest good. You are loved beyond measure. You are valued beyond words. You are powerful beyond belief. And nothing that anyone else does or doesn't do can ever change that. So let go of the need for revenge. Let go of the need to understand why. Let go of the need for them to acknowledge what they did. Let go of the weight of resentment. Let go of the prison of bitterness. Let go of everything that's keeping you stuck in the past and step into the glorious future that's waiting for you. Your best days are not behind you. Your greatest joys are not in the past. Your most fulfilling relationships have not already happened. Everything you've been through has been preparing you for everything that's coming. And what's coming is so good, so beautiful, so aligned with your deepest desires that you'll be glad for every lesson, grateful for every teacher, even the ones who taught you through pain. This is the mystery and the miracle of how God works. This is the wisdom and the wonder of divine intelligence. This is the way the universe operates, always guiding us toward love, always calling us toward our highest selves, always using every experience, even the painful ones, to help us remember who we really are. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are defined by how you choose to respond. You are not limited by the cruelty of others. You are empowered by your own consciousness. You are not a victim of circumstances. You are a creator of realities. And the reality you create from this moment forward is entirely up to you. Choose wisely. Choose consciously. Choose from your divine nature rather than your wounded ego. Choose love over hate. Choose forgiveness over resentment. Choose peace over chaos. Choose to be the light even when others choose darkness. And watch as your life transforms in ways you never thought possible. This is your time. This is your opportunity. This is your invitation to step into the fullness of who you really are. Don't waste another moment focused on people who hurt you. Don't give away another ounce of energy to past pain. Don't spend another day waiting for karma to do what you think needs to be done. Instead, focus all of your attention, all of your energy, all of your power on creating a life so beautiful, so joyful, so abundant, that the hurt of the past becomes nothing more than a distant memory. You have that power. You've always had that power. And now it's time to use it. Now it's time to rise. Now it's time to heal. Now it's time to forgive. Now it's time to let go. Now it's time to become everything you were born to be. The universe is waiting. God is waiting. Your destiny is waiting. All you have to do is say yes. You know what's exhausting? Trying to control everything. Trying to manage every outcome, predict every possibility, force every door open, push every river upstream. We spend so much of our lives white-knuckling our way through existence, convinced that if we just hold on tight enough, if we just plan well enough, if we just worry hard enough, we can somehow bend reality to our will. But here's what I've learned, and here's what I want to share with you right now. You can't control everything. And the moment you truly understand that, the moment you truly accept that, your life begins to transform in ways you never thought possible. There's this beautiful paradox that exists in life. The more you try to control, the more out of control you feel. The tighter you grip, the more slips through your fingers. It's like holding sand in your hand. When you squeeze it tight, it pours out between your fingers. But when you hold your hand open, gently, the sand stays right there. This is the fundamental truth about control, that most of us spend decades learning the hard way. Think about all the energy you've spent trying to control things that were never yours to control in the first place. You've tried to control what other people think about you. You've tried to control how your relationships unfold. You've tried to control the timing of your success. You've tried to control outcomes that depend on 1,000 variables you can't even see. And what has all that effort gotten you? Stress, anxiety, sleepless nights, a constant hum of worry running through your mind like background static you can't turn off. But what if I told you there's another way? What if I told you that you could release all of that burden, all of that pressure, all of that exhausting effort to control everything, and instead trust in something greater than yourself? Now, when I say God, I'm not talking about some bearded figure sitting on a cloud judging you. I'm talking about the infinite intelligence that runs through all of life. The force that makes your heart beat without you thinking about it. The power that turns a seed into a flower, that spins the planets in their orbits, that orchestrates the entire universe with perfect precision. Call it God, call it the universe, call it Source, call it the Tao, call it whatever resonates with you. The name doesn't matter. What matters is recognizing that there's an intelligence far greater than your egos need to control, and when you align with it, when you surrender to it, miracles happen. Surrender is not giving up. Let me say that again, because this is where so many people get confused. Surrender is not giving up. Surrender is not passive. Surrender is not about becoming a doormat or abandoning your dreams or sitting around waiting for life to happen to you. Surrender is about releasing your attachment to how things should unfold while remaining fully engaged in the present moment. It's about doing your best, taking inspired action, and then trusting that what's meant for you will come to you in the perfect way at the perfect time. You see, there are really only two things in life that you have genuine control over: your thoughts and your actions. That's it. Everything else is outside your sphere of control. You don't control the weather. You don't control the stock market. You don't control whether someone loves you back. You don't control if you get that job. You don't control your neighbor's behavior. You don't control the traffic. You don't control how your body ages. You don't control most of what happens in this world. But you do control how you think about it, and you do control what you do in response to it. When you understand this distinction, when you really get clear about what's in your control and what isn't, something shifts inside you. You stop wasting energy on things you can't change. You stop arguing with reality. You stop living in constant resistance to what is. And in that space of acceptance, in that space of surrender, you find peace, real peace. Not the fake peace that comes from finally controlling something, but the deep, unshakable peace that comes from knowing you're being guided by something far wiser than your worried mind. Let me tell you something about the ego. The ego loves control. The ego believes that you are separate from everything else, that you're alone in this world, that if you don't control everything, you'll be destroyed. The ego is like a frightened child who thinks that gripping the steering wheel tighter will somehow make the road less bumpy. But the truth is, you're not separate. You're not alone. You're not driving this car by yourself. You're part of something infinite, something eternal, something that has your back in ways you can't even comprehend. When you try to control everything, you're operating from ego. You're operating from fear. You're saying to the universe, I don't trust you. I don't trust that you know what you're doing. I have to take over here because clearly you're going to mess this up. But when you surrender, when you release control, you're operating from your higher self. You're operating from faith. You're saying, I trust that there's a greater plan here. I trust that I'm being guided. I trust that even when things don't go the way I planned, they're going exactly the way they need to go. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but what about responsibility? What about working hard? What about going after my goals? And I'm saying yes to all of that, absolutely yes. You should work hard. You should set goals. You should take action. But there's a difference between taking action from a place of trust versus taking action from a place of fear. When you're coming from trust, you work hard because it feels good to contribute, to create, to express yourself. When you're coming from fear, you work hard because you're trying to force a specific outcome, because you're terrified of what will happen if you don't succeed, because you believe your worth depends on achieving that one thing. The universe responds differently to these two energies. When you're trying to force and control, you create resistance. Doors stay closed. Things feel difficult. You push and push and push, and it's like swimming against the current. But when you surrender, when you align with the flow of life, when you do your part, and then trust God to do His part, Things start to happen in ways you could never have orchestrated yourself. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. The right people show up at the right time. Solutions present themselves. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. I've seen this in my own life more times than I can count. The times when I've been most anxious, most controlling, most convinced that I had to make something happen, those were the times when nothing worked. I'd plan and scheme and manipulate and force, and it was like pushing a boulder up a hill. But the times when I've surrendered, when I've said, okay, I've done my best, and now I'm going to trust that this will work out for my highest good. Those were the times when magic happened. Those were the times when opportunities came that were better than anything I could have planned. Here's a simple truth. Your ego doesn't know what's best for you. Your ego only knows what it wants right now in this moment, based on its limited understanding of reality. But God, the universe, source, this infinite intelligence, it sees everything. It sees the bigger picture. It sees 10 years down the road. It sees the lessons you need to learn. It sees the person you're becoming. It sees connections and possibilities that your mind could never calculate. So when you surrender to this greater intelligence, you're not giving up control. You're actually gaining access to a wisdom far beyond your own. Think about it this way. Have you ever looked back at something that didn't work out, something you desperately wanted that you didn't get, and realized later that it was actually the best thing that could have happened? Maybe you didn't get that job, and then a better opportunity came along. Maybe that relationship ended, and then you met someone who was actually right for you. Maybe you got sick, and it forced you to slow down and reassess your whole life. In the moment, it felt like everything was falling apart. But in hindsight, you can see that everything was actually falling into place. That's how surrender works. When you release your grip on how things should be and trust that things are unfolding exactly as they need to, you give life permission to surprise you. You give God room to work miracles. You open yourself up to possibilities you never would have considered because you were so fixated on your one specific outcome. And here's something beautiful that happens when you start to live this way. You stop suffering. So much of our suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from our resistance to what happens to us. We think things should be different. We think we should have gotten that promotion. We think our kids should behave a certain way. We think our bodies should look different. We think the world should be fairer. And all of that thinking, all of that shoulding on ourselves and others creates pain. But when you surrender, when you accept what is, when you stop fighting reality, the suffering dissolves. You might still experience pain, you might still face challenges, but you're no longer adding that extra layer of suffering that comes from wishing things were different than they are. This doesn't mean you become passive or complacent. You can accept what is while still working to improve things. You can acknowledge that something is difficult while still taking steps to change it. But you do it from a place of peace instead of a place of resistance. You do it because it's aligned with your values and your purpose, not because you're desperately trying to control an outcome. Let me share something with you about worry. Worry is the ego's attempt to control the future by thinking about it obsessively in the present. We worry because we believe that if we think about something enough, if we play out every possible scenario, we can somehow prevent bad things from happening. But has worry ever actually prevented anything? Has anxiety ever solved a problem? No. All worry does is make you suffer through something twice, once in your mind and once in reality if it actually happens. And most of the things we worry about never even happen. When you surrender worry to God, when you say, I'm going to do my best today and I'm going to trust that I'm being taken care of, you free up an enormous amount of energy. Energy that was going into worry can now go into creativity, into love, into joy, into actually living your life instead of constantly rehearsing disasters in your mind. There's a practice I want to share with you. It's very simple, but it's profoundly powerful. Whenever you notice yourself trying to control something that's outside your control, whenever you feel that tension, that anxiety, that desperate need to make something happen, pause, take a breath. And then say either out loud or in your mind, I release this to God. I trust that I'm being guided. I trust that this is unfolding for my highest good. And then consciously let it go. Feel the tension leaving your body. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel your jaw unclench. Release the burden you've been carrying that was never yours to carry in the first place. At first, your ego will fight this. Your ego will say, but if I don't control this, everything will fall apart. Your ego will come up with 1,000 reasons why you need to hold on tight. But gently, patiently, keep releasing, keep surrendering, keep trusting, and over time, you'll start to see evidence that you really are being taken care of. You'll start to notice how things work out in ways you never expected. You'll start to feel lighter, freer, more at peace. And here's something really important. Surrendering to God doesn't mean you don't have preferences. It doesn't mean you can't want things. It doesn't mean you shouldn't set goals or have dreams. You can absolutely have preferences. You can absolutely work toward what you want. But you hold those preferences lightly. You're not attached. You're saying, this is what I'd like to happen, but I trust that if something different happens, it's because there's something even better in store for me, or there's a lesson I need to learn, or the timing isn't right yet. This is the difference between intention and attachment. Intention is saying, I'd like to create this in my life, and I'm going to take action toward it. Attachment is saying, I must have this specific thing in this specific way at this specific time, or I won't be okay. Intention keeps you focused and motivated. Attachment makes you suffer. When you combine clear intention with surrender to outcomes, you become unstoppable. You take powerful action without being paralyzed by fear of failure. You go after what you want while remaining open to what actually shows up. Let me tell you about faith. Real faith isn't believing that God will give you exactly what you want when you want it. Real faith is trusting that God knows what you need better than you do, and that everything is working out for your highest good even when it doesn't look like it. Real faith is being able to say, I don't understand why this is happening, but I trust that there's a reason. Real faith is continuing to show up, continuing to do your best, continuing to choose love, even when circumstances seem to suggest you should give up. And here's what faith does. It transforms your relationship with uncertainty. Most people are terrified of uncertainty. They want guarantees. They want to know how things will turn out before they take action. But life doesn't work that way. Life is fundamentally uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't even know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. But when you have faith, when you trust that you're being guided, uncertainty becomes exciting instead of terrifying. It becomes an adventure instead of a threat. You start to see challenges differently when you surrender. Instead of thinking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what is this trying to teach me? Instead of resisting difficult situations, you lean into them, curious about what they're revealing. You start to understand that obstacles aren't punishments, they're opportunities. They're opportunities to grow, to develop strength, to discover resources within yourself you didn't know you had. And when you stop trying to control everything, you become more present. Think about it. When you're constantly worrying about the future or trying to manipulate outcomes, you're not here now. You're living in some imaginary future that hasn't happened yet and might never happen. But when you surrender, when you trust that the future is being taken care of, you can actually be here, right now, in this moment, which is the only moment you actually have. This moment is where life happens. This moment is where joy exists. This moment is where love is available. This moment is where peace lives. But you can't experience any of that if you're too busy controlling, planning, worrying, forcing. Surrender brings you back to now, and now is actually pretty beautiful when you're paying attention to it. Let me tell you something about miracles. Miracles happen all the time, but we miss them because we're too busy trying to control things. A miracle is simply a shift in perception, a moment when you see something from love instead of fear, from trust instead of control. When you surrender, you open yourself up to constant miracles. You start to notice synchronicities. You start to see how everything is connected. You start to recognize the hand of God in the smallest details of your life. And you know what else happens when you surrender? Your relationships improve. Think about how much conflict in relationships comes from trying to control the other person, trying to make them behave the way you want them to behave, trying to change them, trying to make them understand your point of view. But when you surrender, when you release your need to control how others show up, you can actually love them as they are. You can accept them. You can let them be on their own journey while you focus on your own. This doesn't mean you tolerate abuse or stay in situations that don't serve you. It means you release the burden of trying to change people who don't want to change. It means you focus on controlling your own thoughts and actions, and you let others be responsible for theirs. It means you love without attachment, support without enabling, care without controlling.